Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is an interesting episode. Today I'm giving myself another challenge. I do this every once in a while when I'm particularly stuck in a rut, which I absolutely have been creatively lately with my photography. I have not shot a lot. Part of that is because I have had so many constraints on my time, but the other part is that I just haven't been feeling it. And I know we all go through that. I know you go through that. Whenever I do go through something like that, what really helps me is to give myself a challenge, some creative constraints artificially imposed as a way to get myself out there and get excited about shooting. Let me give you an example. How about? Let me tell you what we're doing today. Today, I wanted to give myself a challenge and actually partnered with my friends at KEH.com to provide a challenge of finding a decent landscape photography kit, maybe a starter kit for under $1,000. And also to maybe provide some insights into what I would pick if I only had $1,000 to work with for my first time kit. Thanks to KEH, this video is possible. I started out with $1,000. I searched their website, and this video is sponsored by KEH. Who, as you know, is a sponsor that I love working with because KEH provides opportunity to access used gear at a very decent price and in a way that I trust, meaning that the gear is rated accurately and goes along with a great guarantee in case anything goes wrong. And the selection is always really good. And if you know me, you know that I really like going used first. I always, if I can, will buy used, good condition used gear, and KEH is where I go to find that gear. It's also where I go to sell my gear, which I tend to do a lot of as well, as you guys know. So we really appreciate KEH sponsoring this video, but also just helping me get off my butt. I have to be honest with you, I get emails from them saying, hey, let's do a sponsored video, let's find something creative to do. And if it wasn't for that, it might be another month before I would have had a video out. So I appreciate KEH on multiple levels. And it is KEH where I went to find the gear that I'm gonna show you today for under $1,000. In fact, I've got it right here. And let's unbox this stuff and see what we were able to find for less than $1,000. Cut away, I heard. I'm supposed to cut away from my body. Cut towards myself so many times on camera, people always get mad at me. All right, so we'll start out with the camera platform. And before I show this to you, I have to kind of tell you what I didn't do, which a lot of you probably expected me to, and I didn't go Fuji. The reason why is because Fuji holds its value really well, so it's actually pretty expensive, even though it's an excellent entry point into landscape otherwise, or really any photography for that matter. I love Fuji, recommend it readily and often. The lenses especially, they hold their value, so even though I'm going used, to get the flexibility that I would need would put me over $1,000 and not allow for some really important accessories and other things. So I chose a different platform that is a good platform, a decent platform, but has not held its value. And that, my friends, is the Canon EOS M platform. This is the M5, and the M5 I've reviewed before, and I liked it. It's a decent camera, and it is, in my opinion, very underrated, very great performing camera that just didn't get the adoption. And a lot of the reason why is because if people are going to go Canon, usually they want to get themselves in a position where they can upgrade with the system. And in some ways, the EOS M platform does paint you slightly into a corner. So this camera came out in 2016. The reason why I like it for landscape photography, for entry point into landscape photography, is because, again, it's just so affordable. The price is so decent, so good for such a powerful system. I really do feel like this is the best value for your dollar if you're getting into landscape and you're willing to go used. Other reasons why I think it works well for landscape, for me personally, you know, you could go with a DSLR. There are plenty out there. For this price range, though, you're going to get a DSLR that does not have an articulating screen. This has an articulating screen, which I feel like is really important for landscape, being able to see that screen at an angle, because sometimes you're really low, sometimes you're up high on that tripod, and it can be frustrating if you have to crane your neck in weird angles sometimes to be able to see what you're capturing. So this provides that articulation that is very nice. Not only that, but I'm a big fan of mirrorless, especially for newer photographers. You guys, a lot of you are used to shooting on your phone, and so going mirrorless makes a lot of sense because what you see is what you get. With DSLR, you are going to have to learn some exposure triangle stuff beforehand so you can kind of predict what you'll see. Now, of course, you can go live view, but mirrorless, it's just easier to learn. And it's kind of the way the world's going. So if I was newer to photography, I really would try to go mirrorless. I wouldn't go to DSLR for that reason, even though you can get some good value for your dollar with DSLR. That's just my choice. There's lots of ways to go. This is just what I would do. I'm also kind of thinking about who I'm talking to, who is viewing this video. I know a lot of the pundits, those of you that have been shooting for a long time, will not agree with everything I'm saying because you found a different path, and that makes sense. But I'm in my head, in my mind's eye, I'm seeing somebody who's a younger photographer, maybe in their 20s, grew up with cell phones, and this platform is going to make a lot more sense to you than a DSLR platform, be easier to access. So that's what I would recommend. And it's what I would do, even though I didn't grow up with cell phones. Now, it doesn't come without its limitations. This is not a weather sealed. It's not as rugged. That was one of the biggest complaints that this camera has had through the years, that it doesn't hold up like a DSLR would. So you do have to be a little bit more careful with something like this out in nature, doing landscape photography. So that's just something to keep in mind. Additionally, it does have a low battery capacity, as most mirrorless cameras, especially cameras this size, will have. So you're going to also want to pony up some extra cash for a few extra batteries, probably if you're out for a day of shooting. You'll probably be disappointed with how long the battery lasts in a platform like this. But aside from that, those are the only two really big drawbacks that I would see by choosing a platform like this. It's a 24 megapixel system. Its Canon sensors and color, I think, are beautiful. It's where I started. So that's the camera itself, and that is where we're starting. So let's go now to the lens situation. All right, I think that this is the next. Yes, this is the lens I wanted to talk about next. This is probably the lens that I will be using the most while shooting with this as a landscape photography camera. This is the lens I'd recommend you get first. This is the Canon EOS M 15 to 45 millimeter, 3.5 to 6.3 variable aperture lens. This is not a high quality premium lens by any means. There are much better Canon lenses out there. This is what you would call a kit lens. But having said that, this is a great performing lens, a lens that I would have absolutely no problem or hesitation using for my landscape photography. It's going to provide the sharpness and detail that you need. And don't get caught up by that high aperture number. Starting at a 3.5, they call this more of a slow lens, meaning it doesn't allow for as much light intake to reach that sensor. That means you won't get things like shallow depth of field. You're not going to get that quite as much. And it's not going to perform as well in a low light situation if you're handheld. But with landscape photography, those are things that you don't normally need. Wildlife photography, maybe, if you're doing some of that, that's a different story. But if you're doing landscape, usually you're not going to be focused close, and usually higher aperture numbers are fine. That's what you need. So that 15 to 45 range gives you a pretty wide field of view. That gets you a little bit more than a 24 millimeter full frame equivalent. So it's not super wide, and you will feel that from time to time. You will feel that this is not quite wide enough for every situation. For most of the time, it'll probably be fine. The great thing about getting into landscape photography and doing it properly, which we'll talk about in a minute, is don't necessarily have to have a wide angle lens to shoot wide. You can shoot wide with, you know, a medium range or fairly wide angle lens like this one. When you stitch images together, while you can stitch together photos to shoot wider, you can't get the resolution and detail if you want to zoom in, get something really far in that distance, tighten up on some landscapes. This lens isn't going to be able to get you that that range, and so we got to get something else. This isn't adequate for all situations. All right, so this is what we have next. This is not a lens. This is a lens adapter. This is the EF to EOS lens adapter, and what this allows you to do is adapt traditional Canon EF lenses, so those bigger kind of DSLR lenses, on the EOS M body, allow you to focus just as quickly almost as you would with a native DSLR lens. So this will allow you to start buying some of those more higher end lenses that you might use on the EOS or the EF platform. And so this can allow you to kind of level up, or what a lot of newer landscape photographers want. They want an entry point, but they also want a trajectory or ability to level up their gear as they go, and this provides that opportunity. So with that allows us to get other lenses, the EF lenses, like I said. So here we have one of those. And I was starting to feel the pressure as far as, you know, staying under 1,000 at this point. So I decided on one of the most affordable EOS telephoto ranged lenses. And, you know, truth be told, I didn't do a lot of research ahead of time. This is not a lens I've ever shot with. I used to shoot Canon, but I never used this one. Didn't do a ton of research to find out why this was so affordable. This zoom lens is the Canon EF-75 to 300 millimeter, f4 to 5.6 zoom lens. And this, as I understand it now, I didn't know beforehand, is not the greatest lens. In fact, it's one of a lot of people think it's Canon's not so good, kind of crappy lens. And some of the reviews would back that up. However, as long as you stay under 135 millimeter, meaning don't zoom past 135, and as long as you're staying at an f8-ish aperture, this will provide sharp images. If you, and wider the better, honestly. If you're zooming to the 75 millimeter, that's gonna be better. But I wouldn't shoot it wide open. I wouldn't shoot it stop down all the way to the f22 or whatever. I would try to stick at f8 or f11, or I'm going to try to stay at f8 or f11, and not go past 135, because I've seen what the results look like, and it's not pretty. But it's not too bad if at f8 and at a reasonable zoom range. So I think it'll work. We'll find out though. We'll see how it goes. And if this one doesn't, I know there are other Canon lenses we probably could have bought for a little bit more money, because we're well within our $1,000 budget limit. But we'll see. We'll see if this is one that I can actually recommend or not after we go out and use it. But those are the lenses. I don't think I finished saying just a couple more things though about this 15 to 45 kit lens here. This one also is not the sharpest lens at the wide open apertures that it has. This is another lens where you'd want to try to stick between f8 and f11. That's not a problem because we'll be using a tripod. And it is also not great close up. So that's kind of a soft look. Focus is a little soft when you're close up, so it's not necessarily great for detailed nature photography when you want to get things sharp, but that's not what we're using this kit for. This is for strictly landscapes, so I think it's going to work. Finally, and probably one of the most important aspects, and definitely something that has to be figured into the budget, is a tripod. I was able to find a really decent, much older, but by no means irrelevant or outdated tripod. This is a Bogen tripod legs, made by Manfrotto, I guess. They don't make this obviously anymore. This is well used, well loved, but in really good shape, and it's sturdy. This is an aluminum metal. This thing is going to be sturdy, and it's going to provide the sharpest photos that that we can get, because it's a little bit of a beast. It's got some heft to it. Not too bad though. I've seen worse, and I'm excited about these tripod legs. I have complete 100% faith that these will do the job though. You know, alternatively, we could have gotten some cheap plastic legs or some travel tripod arrangement for an equivalent for newer. Like, that would be tempting. Go on Amazon and get a cheaper tripod. But no, this is 100% what I would get if I was starting. And in fact, I wish I'd known that, because the tripod, my first tripod was a flimsy, not a very good tripod, and my pictures suffered as a result. So this is going to work great, and it was way cheap. And then along with that, I'm not sure if this tripod head actually came with that one or not. It looks like it might have, but a really beefy, good, solid Manfrotto head that will tighten up nice and tight and be nice and sturdy. This is not a cheap tripod ball head. This will go really well with our sticks and be able to get us a lot of stability. So this is a very, very essential, vital, as important as anything else, component to your landscape kit. And it doesn't have to be super expensive, as we've demonstrated here. So I don't know our final number. I can't remember. I've got all the numbers on the screen, but it was well within our $1,000. Plenty of money left over to get SD cards, maybe even some ND filters or polarizers. I haven't bought those. I'll use mine if I need to, because the ones I have are not terribly expensive. They would have been well within our $1,000, so I'm not too concerned about showing that process. In general though, I tend to not be a filter guy. I'll take multiple exposures to manage the exposure rather than using a gradient filter situation. That's just me. I feel like those are too fiddly, and I don't mind doing post work to bring things back together. And for a lot of newer landscape photographers, it's easier not to have to worry about that stuff anyway. ND filters, on the other hand, for long exposures, those can be important. However, I'm not going anywhere near water or necessarily looking to do long exposure on clouds, so we won't be using that in this episode. I have been just yammering on. We've got our kit. Let's just stop talking and let's start shooting. We're camping, and I saw this really cool outcropping of boulders on the map. It says it's called Chris Castle Mountain. It's not much of a mountain, but it's really pretty. But to get to it, we have to go off-road in my very, very non-off-road vehicle. So hopefully we, you know, make it without popping a tire or something. Sundown is about upon us. There aren't really any clouds in the sky, but hopefully we can get a nice glow on it. Well, the situations, they're less than ideal. There is not a single cloud in the sky, and there are people climbing the mountain that are going to be in the shot, but is that it? I don't know. Other than that, I think we're, whoa. Yeah, like I said, not much to write home about. I'm zoomed in to maybe 35 millimeters. It's about a 50 millimeter equivalent. F10. All right. I don't know how I feel about that. The people, at least the people got out of the shot. They're not in the shot now. Now they're in it again. So I was able to get it right then. I'm gonna wait till the sun is just barely peaking to get just the most golden glow I can. We'll try it again and get that shot, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's great or not, but it's good to at least get a first shot. folks, we're now at location number 2, which I saw on the side of the road just driving by. Have to hurry because I don't know how long this scene is gonna last, but it's very beautiful. So I'm gonna get set up and grab the shot as quick as I can. I'm shooting with 75 to 300, shooting at 75 millimeters. I'm going to take 2 exposures because the sun is because we're shooting into the sun. We're on the side of the road. It's blue hour, so I don't have a lot of time before we're completely out of light. And I saw this little post office scene over here that looked pretty. Hurrying to grab my photo equipment. Try to capture this sucker. All right, there we go. Let's get this shot. So I think this shot is just gonna get better as I wait because there is a beautiful cloud bank over there with some great colors. And it's getting a little darker. The light on the post office, the lights are on. They're just gonna get brighter vis-a-vis the building. So I think this shot should get better as these clouds move in. I'm just hopeful that the clouds move fast enough so that we don't lose the light entirely. So I'll keep my eye on it. Hopefully we get this shot looking even better. That's it for our light, and it never really did, that post office shot never did come to fruition, but I think I got some other shots of this other building, one of which I believe should work out. I think that'll do though. I think I'll call it quits with those. I think I've got a few shots here the last few days of kind of opportunistic landscape photography. You know, I didn't go out with the intentionality that I'd like to because I just don't have time for that type of landscape photography with all the responsibilities I have. But rather just kept my eyes out with the light and with the landscapes that we saw doing various activities in daily life. You know, sort of how a lot of beginning landscape photographers would be using a kit like this, getting into it. When you're just kind of starting out, you shoot when you have time, whether you're in university or got a family or other things. It's hard to have that, that dedicated time every morning to do landscape photography or evening or whatever. So this kind of simulates that. I think this camera works pretty well for that.